Right! Moving along swiftly, darlings. We also have in the Headley Highlight Show's Royal Corner this week my second story, or should I say my third story this week in the Royal Corner, is about Prince Andrew. And this article articulates that he had a fall from grace. I articulate he never even occupied a position of grace to begin with. And I believe that the nexus of his voluntary withdrawal of the titles is all of the bad PR him and his family have been having over the last couple of weeks. And right on schedule, darlings, it's Sycophant of the Week. Laura Bundock from the Sky News Network. This week, the royal correspondent has got herself a nomination for Sycophant of the Week. Come in, Laura, darling. Take a seat. Plant your bun docks on the chair, Miss Bundock. You are a contender. Do sit down, darling. She writes, Prince Andrew's fall from grace is a never-ending saga, a perennial problem for the palace. So that title alone garners Laura Bundock the title of Sycophant of the Week. Why? Because of the early framing for the reader. It frames the scandal as a problem for the palace, as opposed to looking at the gravity of his associations and of his behaviour in the past. It decides that the institution's discomfort is more important than the gravity of the alleged crimes, perennial and palace problem. The whole tone is about preserving the institution. She continues, after the title, the Duke of York isn't a working royal, doesn't attend official events, and is rarely seen in public. He's been stripped of his duties and patronages, but is this enough? She then tells you where to direct your attention about the problem, the associations and his behaviour. This is more troubling embarrassment for the royal family, as once again Prince Andrew's character and dubious associations hit the headlines. Further details about his relationship with Virginia Giuffre and convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein in the posthumous publication of Giuffre's memoir are now circulating in the press. She then tells you, we've heard a lot of this before, but Miss Giuffre's description of an entitled prince thinking it was his birthright to sleep with her makes for uncomfortable reading. So Laura Bundock presents Virginia Giuffre's allegations as uncomfortable reading. That's the characterization. So she wants to minimize the matter to one of personal discomfort for the reader rather than a seriously actionable claim of abuse which should be investigated by the police, but it hasn't been and won't be. It has no critical dissection of his denial in the face of the evidence that was provided. Let's not forget, Mum coughed up at least 12 million, I think it was, for Giuffre, so she could have a peaceful jubilee. And then it goes on to mildly point out that it was a suggestion of an allegation that has caused this problem. She writes, and it comes just days after an email, singular, was published suggesting the Duke of York was in touch with Epstein after he supposedly cut ties. So once again giving the framing of, is it possible? Maybe not. She then goes on to talk about how this is causing the king some consternation, so we need to centre the king's feelings as important in this article. Prince Andrew's name is synonymous with royal scandal, and each bombshell brings further pain for the king. He's portrayed as a victim of his brother, as opposed to an enabler. The use of the language perennial problem is a key piece of PR framing in this article by Miss Bundock. She seeks to cast Andrew as unsolvable, an ongoing nuisance, deflecting from the idea that the institution itself is responsible for creating monsters like himself. She then goes on to talk about the difficulties of the title being removed. Those are never discussed when we're talking about removing the title from the Sussexes, of course. And she presents the idea as being insurmountable. This also comes 2 weeks after his ex-wife, Miss Ferguson, who's still living a life of absolute luxury, was also caught up in the scandal, as it's alleged his whole family, including some of the other members of the family, were all eating and drinking from the money pot, which was the Epstein ATM. And by mentioning Sarah Ferguson in this article, she seeks to isolate the problem within the York branch of the body of royalty. The final part of her article, she examines the whole harm through the lens of the Windsors. And for that, she absolutely gets Sycophant of the Week, darling. Thank you, Laura Bundock from Sky News, Royal Correspondent, for your article. Which actually wasn't the art. It was a PR stunt in spin, in reframing absolutely terrible behaviour as an isolated incident. Thank you, darling, and for that you get Sycophant of the Week. I know I'll see you again. Unfortunately. Also this week in the Headley Highlight Show's Royal Corner. As I mentioned before, Virginia Giuffre's book, her memoir, Nobody's Girl, is going to be available, I think, next week. And excerpts of it have been publicized and people have been talking about it. And part of that article I just shared with you was in relation to, obviously it was all about Prince Andrew and the sycophantic nature of our press in this country, but also the fact that this book is coming out has also, I think, influenced the decision of Prince Andrew to voluntarily, with quotation marks, no longer use his titles, because you actually need an act of parliament to remove a title of that nature. So it's just voluntary. So to me, like I said, it's perfunctory.